Hi, folks. This is John Adamson, the Rehab and Documentation Guru. Welcome you to a special video where today I'm going to do another interview. And today I have Dr. Charles Stevens on, DPT and CLT. So he's a certified lymph therapist, and he is the owner of Mobile Therapy Services for the last 3.5 years. Well, it's a little bit longer now because, Charles, we touched base a little bit longer ago, about 3 months ago.
Mhm.
Prior to that, he's had several years of experience in outpatient therapy. So first of all, welcome, Charles.
Nice to join you. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. So you'll see, folks, soon why I asked Dr. Stevens to be on this video, because he's got some interesting information that I think in this day and age you might find helpful. In fact, in this day and age, what are we seeing across the nation? We're seeing therapists get laid off. We're seeing ridiculous productivity standards, and we're seeing people basically fed up with the powers that be in their organizations. And Charles today is going to be talking about an opportunity that you might want to take advantage of that'll help you go into business for yourself. So first of all, Charles, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself? What brought you to PT and what brought you to this stage of your career development?
Well, I'm from the Northeast Pennsylvania area, and I've always loved working out and lifting weights. So, my mother's a nurse practitioner, and she said, "Why don't you look into therapy?" I consider it a stepping stone to medical school, and the more I got into it, the more I loved it, and it definitely is my passion, sharing exercise and fitness with others, particularly our geriatric population. So, I did work for another large outpatient therapy house call provider. And they left the area. So I went off on my own and I said, wow, I think I can make a go of this. Let me see what happens. And it's been a blessing. We've grown year by year, and there's more and more people to help. And it started off as just myself. And then we added, now there's 3 physical therapists, 3 occupational therapists. And now we have speech therapy that we're offering as well under Medicare Part B. So it's definitely a cool niche. And it's, like I said, outpatient therapy on a house call. Our patients, unlike Medicare Part A, don't have to be homebound. They don't need a face-to-face encounter from the physician, just a simple referral for outpatient therapy, and it's covered by Medicare under outpatient guidelines.
So obviously, a lot of people, when they think of home health, they think of Part A therapy. Although we are familiar with the fact that there are some entities that go into the home and provide Part B services, and that's what Charles is talking about. So can you go a little bit more into detail about your particular business model, outpatient therapy that comes to you?
Yes. So the business model is run, Medicare would say under outpatient Part B guidelines, it's payable under a physician fee schedule in our office or in the patient's home. Those are the 2 service locations. So we don't have a physical office aside from an adult daycare that I lease some space in, which is a clinic. All the other services are rendered in the patient's home. It follows an 8-minute billing rule, 8-minute billing rule by Medicare guidelines. And, a therapist could set up one of these practices with minimal upfront costs utilizing a home office. And we can disperse all the therapy services directly within the patient's home with minimal equipment. We don't even have any ultrasound or e-stim units. It's all manual therapy, prescriptive exercises, gait training, neural rehab, TheraAct, all those procedure codes, and, focus on getting people moving and, kind of weaning down off modalities, essentially. We've been very successful doing so.
So how long did it take you personally to get up and running with this model?
It took, I think Medicare approved it within like 45 to 60 days of the application going out. And then I already had a calling of patients that knew me as a therapist and wanted services. And then we were really successful at pushing testimonials of patients that consented about the power of therapy, how much we've helped their pain, what they can do that's improved, and taking those testimonials back to the referring providers. And, the patients right now are referring other patients. And, one patient I helped referring to 2 of her friends, and now the husband and wife both want therapy. And now it's just kind of like a snowball coming down a hill where people tell other people. And then with home health changing and really limiting the amount of therapy they're dispensing, under outpatient services, we can help these people and kind of pick up the slack where they're not really getting care as well.
And what kind of investment did you have to put in? I mean, most people think of starting a business and they think, well, this is going to cost me an arm and a leg. I'm going to max out my 3 credit cards just to get this going. Now you're going to talk more about your opportunities you offer other therapists, but what realistically could a therapist look to expend to get into this?
Probably, definitely under $10,000. If you set up a clinic, so if you like purchase a clinic or lease space, they're going to lock you into some sort of lease. You have to purchase equipment. You have to purchase a secretary and phone system and a fax. I just purchased a digital fax from my fax. It was like $10 a month. The credentialing company, I think, was like $1,500 to get me enrolled within Medicare that I paid at that time. I purchased some paperwork templates. When I started, I wasn't even using EHR. We could be on paper. There's no verbiage from Medicare that we can't use paper charts. So a home office, a computer, a scanner, you could probably set this up for definitely under $10,000, maybe even better than that. And, I'm still working on my pricing on the turnkey setup, but it's going to be definitely under 10,000 and very competitive. So very minimal upfront cost versus if you set up a home health company on Medicare Part A, you're looking at $10,000 to $15,000 worth of a startup cost, and that doesn't even count the amount of money you'd have to have in a bank account and surveys and all the red tape you'd have to go through. Setting up a Part B house call model, there's no survey. You're not going to have $80,000 in liquid assets in a bank account to show Medicare you're viable. You could have $3 in the bank account, and it doesn't matter. Yeah. So it's nowhere near the amount of red tape. Because I looked into setting up Part A, and it's so intense, and there's so much financial you have to have. You have to have an administrator, nursing administrator, alternative, all this crazy people you have to have in place, and all those people want to get paid. You could set up a Part B outpatient therapy house call practice for much, much, much less, with much less overhead, and you could do it yourself. And as it grew, if you need to hire more people, you can.
Yeah, and you talked about Part A setup. I mean, part of the problem with post PDGM is the fact that how Medicare pays is not very good for a small business setup. You really need to be a large entity to survive more in the home health Part A model these days. So you actually brought up a little bit about your turnkey. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit because I think that's interesting. And I looked at your website. You've obviously at this point put in more than about $10,000 into your business because you've got a very nice website. Let's talk about electronic medical records, electronic healthcare records. What are you using for software that you think works well for a small business model like you have?
Okay. I mean, this is no plug. I'm not a compensated employee by this company. So I'll prelude that by saying a disclaimer. The Quick EMR is the HR I use. One of the reasons I like them versus other competitors is that they only charge you per full-time user. So if you work for me and you only saw 3 patients a month, they're going to charge me a fraction of what a full-time user would use. So it might be whatever, X amount of dollars a month. And if you saw 50% of a full-time user, they're only charging me half that amount. Or if I have people that are per diem therapists and they don't see anybody, I'm not billed at all that month. The software is nice. It's PT, SLP, all 3 disciplines, PT, OT, speech. You can fax from within the system. It's nice for me because I can monitor the other therapists and look at their paperwork remotely. I don't have to have a paper chart, or God forbid you lose a paper chart. Like, legibility isn't an issue. So there's a lot of benefits to the computer system. Some of my staff was resistant to use computers, but there's much, much more benefits, and then my penmanship stinks. And if Medicare can't read it, then what the heck was done, right? I mean, it has a lot of benefits using EHR.
Yeah, because one of the issues of compliance is legibility, of course.
Yes.
And I'm right with you, man. My handwriting sucks.
Yeah.
So
I can't even read it, let alone a Medicare auditor. They say, what the heck does that say?
Yeah, and then I don't know if you've ever had to do a post-payment denial audit on documentation that was manually written, but that's terrible. Trying to decipher what the heck was written, 2 years ago. So you have obviously built this business. And let me ask you, because a lot of people shy away from becoming their own business owner because of hours. And can you talk for a little bit about what your typical week looks like in terms of hours? And do you see a cost benefit to that in terms of what you're averaging hourly?
So when I first set this up, I was working part-time in a hospital system. So any therapists who are interested in maybe going off on their own, they're fed up with nursing home administrators and home health companies telling them how to practice. And like you said, no one should interject themselves between you and the patient. It should be you and the patient, not external force telling you how many visits to do or whatever. So when I first started, I was working probably 20 hours a week in a hospital, and I was seeing patients on the side and on weekends, like after I got out of the hospital system. So I probably was working 40 to 50 hours on top of working 20 hours or so within a hospital system. I'm very type A, so I don't have to work as much as I do, but I like it. I like the challenge. I like building businesses and building things. So I probably work around 60-ish hours right now a week. Our reimbursements are very good. So you figure if you worked for somebody else, you know, the salaries for therapists right now, I mean, you'd have a hard time breaking 6 figures as a staff therapist. You could do that very easily working for yourself, doing Med B. You know, our reimbursements might be like $90-ish to $100 a session with Medicare and a secondary insurance. So the reimbursements are good. You know, you figure the math. You saw 4 or 5 people a day, 5 or 6 days a week. I mean, you can do very well for yourself. And at the end of the day, like, it's your business, you own it. No one's going to fire you. No one's going to lay you off. And it could be set up working part-time and doing some other things. And, you know, I think one of the reasons I was able to be successful is I was able to get good results and take those results, like powerful results, back to the referring provider, where, you know, one patient came to us with an ankle that needed an ankle replacement. Because of the therapy, she no longer needed an ankle replacement. Huge, right? I mean, and then take that back to the doctor and say, hey, remember Mrs. Smith who needed 2 surgeries on her leg and had to rip out the hardware from an ORIF, and we saved Medicare probably $200,000 of surgeries and therapy and hospitalizations and rehab. Like, get those results back to the doctor, or before and after videos. And I think that's how I was able to grow it, and really, you know, it's by the outcomes and able to show the community what we're doing.
Well, that's, you mentioned the word, that's what we call outcomes-based payment, folks. Showing the value.
My bonus from Medicare, I didn't see it. But
what's that?
I'm still waiting for my bonus from Medicare, but I didn't see it yet.
Right. Because you saved them a boatload of money.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say the greatest challenges that you have as a therapist owner to a small business?
I'm not very good at like managing staff. I think that's one area where I'm not super fantastic. I have some help doing that. As a small business, I mean, I guess dealing with, if Medicare does hit us with that potential 8% cut, we could survive, but I mean, it's death by 1,000 lashes. I mean, if they keep cutting 8%, then 6%, then 3%, you know, it wouldn't stop there. I think it would be more over time. So, you know, I think that's the biggest worry right now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Like, you know, with the changes that are going on, the cost associated with going to a patient in their home, do you think the cuts that Part B is having going forward, and they're still talking about being on the table a 15% reduction for PT assistants and OT assistants, do you see that as negatively impacting this model you're talking about?
We don't really utilize any assistants right now, so it doesn't impact us. Because I think I'd have the supervising therapist would have to be with them on the house call.
That's true, yeah.
So that wouldn't phase us right now. The reimbursements are still good enough, even with the 10 to 15% cut, it would be okay. I think I'm actually going down, and this is no plug to Chad Madden, but I'm going down to see him later this week in Texas for a seminar. I think as outpatient providers, we're going to look for alternative strategies to offset that cost, whether that's cash pay services on the back end, dispensing products or other items to patients. So, you know, if we can't control the Medicare stuff, we can advocate, well, what can we control? And let's try to work towards what we can't control, and, you know, other services that we could utilize to offset that.
You mentioned Chad Madden. That's not a name I'm familiar with. Can you elaborate?
I think he's a fellow Misericordia grad. He's done a lot of direct access marketing, offering patient workshops and that type of thing, you know, so he's really pioneered, I believe, direct marketing, direct response marketing within physical therapy. Cool guy. No plug to him. I'm not a paid employee by him.
Right.
I just research a lot of stuff, and, you know, I'm going down to Texas on Thursday to check this out, so it'll be cool.
Hey, if you get a chance to talk to him, tell him I'd be interested in interviewing him.
I will. He should be there. I'll be like, contact John. Get him on the show.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great, because there are a growing number of therapists that are interested in the cash-based market too.
Mm-hmm.
So you have talked about a turnkey model, And so what I'd like you to talk about right now is, what does that involve? How does that look?
Okay. To be honest with you, in addition to my Part B services, I was going to set up a home health agency, and I paid $15,000 to go down to a consulting company, and I was sitting in a room with like 30 to 50 other people, and I was thinking to myself, I had an epiphany. I said, half of these people would be better off setting up a Part B outpatient therapy company. It would be much, like I said, you don't need really any reserve in a bank account to prove to Medicare you can do this, versus Part A. And it was just a realization that, like, there's a niche here for helping other therapists set this up. It was on the back burner for a little bit. So essentially, if you're a therapist and you want to set up your own company, you're like, hey, like, I'm done working for other people. Like, I'm done being told how to practice. I want to go off on my own. You would pay us a fee. We would get you enrolled within Medicare Part B. You'd have to select the name of your entity. It could be John House Call PT, and then we'd have to see, is that available in your state? And then we would register the entity. We'd get you credentialed and enrolled within Medicare. We provide you with the paperwork templates. I have some more information on my website about teaching people about compliance, and there are softwares you can buy, but if you want to minimize your costs, you could do this with paperwork charts. You don't have to buy an EHR and a computer and a web connection. You could do it with paper charts. So we're offering people a website. So you mentioned my website. I'm not a paid promoter from UJAC Care, but UJAC Care made the website. And with that nominal cost, our cost to the client is going to be less than $5,000. So you're asking for a cost on the Part B setup. So that's the price point we're looking at, under $5,000. We'll get them a website, we'll get them company emails, we'll get them enrolled in Medicare, and I have all the information on the website. So compared to setting up a Part A home health company, which would cost you 10 to 15 grand in consulting fees, we're going to do it for under $5,000, give you a website, get you enrolled, get you the paperwork. And if you want to purchase billing services from us or compliance, we can help you. And we can teach you, how do you document so that at the end of the day, Medicare is not reclaiming, the claim, the money back that they pay you, and that, you're providing good services and that's going to uphold under scrutiny.
Well, that's excellent. Well, Charles Stevens, thank you so much for getting on. One more time, let me get your website for those that are watching this.
It's www.mobiletherapyservicesnepa.com.
And that's for Northeastern Pennsylvania, correct?
Yep.
And what's your email?
mobiletherapyservicesllc@gmail.com.
Great. Well, folks, if you've ever considered being your own boss, if you would like to not have somebody insert themselves between you and the patient, if you would like to be able to set your own hours, this is the kind of stuff that you might want to look at. And Charles has already pioneered this. He's gone through the growing pains. He's got a lot to offer. And so you might want to check out his services and check out his developing turnkey model, because I think that's going to help some of you probably get into a role you'll be satisfied with, because you'll finally be your own boss. Dr. Charles Stevens, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, John. Have a good night.
You too. This is John Adamson, the Rehab and Documentation Guru, reminding you to get paid for what you do and to take care, and God bless.
God bless.